Welcome back to another episode of the Catholic Buzz podcast. We're so happy that you're joining us today. My name is Father Daniele, and I'm joined, as always, by Josh Sullivan over here. Love the glasses, by the way.
Thank you, yeah.
Yes.
I forgot about my contacts today.
Yeah, sometimes you just forget about the contacts.
It really is. That's why you kind of get out the door and you're like, oh! But I'm already halfway to town, so.
Sometimes you forget that they're not in. Sometimes you forget that they are in.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And we can't forget, because we've been chatting already, Matt Van Milligan over here.
Hello.
Matt, you have your contacts on.
Yeah, I don't wear contacts.
Don't wear contacts. I wear contacts.
Yeah,
I know. A lot of people don't know that. I wear contacts. And if they're not in, I need glasses.
Yeah.
I do, yeah. And I can't see without my eyesight is very poor.
Yeah.
Very, very poor.
Are you farsighted?
Yes.
Yeah, so.
Exactly. And it's going to come to a day where I'm just going to get tired of contacts. But I've worn contacts for I don't know, since grade 9 or 10.
Yeah, I was going to say grade 8. So when I started sports in grade 9, that's kind of where I switched over to the contacts so I could play sports and not have to worry about the glasses. Football was a big one, hockey, that kind of stuff. And
exactly.
So, yeah, it was a big one.
No one really cares about this. No one cares. Everyone's
everyone's still in shock. Oh my goodness, he wears contacts.
Some people are still Googling it, maybe. Is it true that Father Daniele wears contacts?
Yeah,
they're trying to fact check it. Yeah, exactly. Well,
can we see it in his eyes if we look really close and zoom into the YouTube video?
I'm so happy to be back with you guys, because we had a bit of a delay last week. Now we're back in action. And, it's funny that we're talking about Googling things and fact-checking things, because this week we're going to tackle something that's happened in the last couple of weeks, because people were quite upset with a comment that Pope Francis made, and do what Matt loves what people do: go to the internet and share their comments, right?
Yeah.
And news media picked up what Pope Francis
said. It was all over everything.
All over. It's amazing.
What we're going to talk about it, but it's a line that backs everything that the church teaches, and even says something like that's funny, or it's whatever. There's no surprise here, people. If you know what the church teaches, this is all in. But I think what people took it as, and what they completely missed, as they often do when they're ranting on social media, they missed the page of great information and took the one line that had nothing to do with the summary of what he was talking about. And they took the one line and was like, okay, let's dive into this, and we hate this. That's right. I will do one thing that I don't normally do, and that's agree with Josh here, because Pope Francis was actually giving out quite a really good talk. Yeah. And so the context for this comment, we haven't even really said what the comment was, but the context was that it was at his general audience on Wednesday. So if people don't know, every Wednesday, traditionally, the Pope goes out into Pope Paul VI Hall and gives a talk. And, John Paul II, that's how we got the theology of the body. Yeah. Remember? Yeah. John Paul II went out every Wednesday and gave a snippet of something that eventually people compiled to make the theology of the body. Pope Benedict used to talk a lot about the saints and all these different things too. So Pope Francis goes out and talks about sort of what's happening in the life of people. And so it was his normal general audience. It was on January 5th that he did this. And he's talking about St. Joseph. Yeah. That's what he was doing. He was talking about St. Joseph. Yeah. Talking about St. Joseph.
And he's talking about fatherhood and parenthood, motherhood, and what a gift it was. And then he said the comment that made the headlines. He said that people are more concerned with their pets over their children.
They spend money, I believe it was something along the lines of, they spend money on food and medicine and clothing, and then the next things are cosmetic and pets. Yeah. And he was like, that was how he was just stating a fact. That's true.
Right. And this is in the context. Remember, he's talking about parenthood.
Yeah.
And so here's the exact quote that Pope Francis was talking about. He said this. He said that he was talking about adoption, right? So he's talking about that people who can't have children, that adoption is quite a gift. He says, so I spoke the other day about the demographic that exists nowadays. People do not want to have children, or just one and no more. And many couples do not have children because they do not want to, or they have just one because they do not want any more, but they have 2 dogs, 2 cats. And then he says, yes, dogs and cats take the place of children. And then I guess people laughed.
Yeah.
You know, he was talking to a group of people, so they laughed. And he says, yes, it is funny. I understand. He says, but this is a reality. And this denial of fatherhood or motherhood diminishes us. It takes away our humanity.
You mean wanting to be a cat mother or cat father or dog? What takes away the chance to be a real father?
Parent.
Yeah, like imagine that, eh?
And you know, the headlines, the media headlines were like, Pope calls pet owners selfish, or something along the line. You know, the Pope calls people who choose pets over children selfish. I mean, he does use the word selfish in here, but he's talking about something else, right? He says with orphanhood there is a certain selfishness. You know, people who choose not to take the path of adoption, or people who just choose to push out the idea of children. You know, that there's a bit of selfishness. So, anyways. Media, right? That's what they did.
Yeah, and it is funny that like they take what is kind of talking about Saint Joseph and like as an adoptive father, it says, you know, fathers aren't born; they're made. They're made by their circumstances, and like that leads well into the beauty of adoption. But you know, the important part to extract from that is this kind of offhand joke that he's making about people who are. You know, prioritizing pet ownership over having children.
There you go.
And it's like that it's kind of distilled down, or like to, you know, the part that actually boils to the surface of social media or headlines or whatever else is that, like, you know, pet ownership is an intrinsic evil that the church needs to condemn. Like, no, it's so far removed from what he's actually saying.
I heard they're updating the catechism.
Yeah. It's,
but that's how people took it. You know, I'm glad you said that, because that's how people took it. People were like, the Pope, what's the Pope got to say about pet owners and all this stuff? You know, the Pope is not saying you should not have a dog. The Pope is not saying you should not have a cat. You know, that's not what he's saying.
No.
And he's not condemning people who can't have children either.
No,
you know,
absolutely not.
But he's like Matt was saying, he's making this connection between Joseph, who takes care of Jesus, you know, in that role of a father. People are denying themselves that opportunity to be a parent when they're choosing to be a cat mom or cat dad,
or
a dog
exclusively
dad,
a cat mom. Right? So like,
by
you know,
choice.
Like we have a dog, but it's, you know, it's not. When we sat down to decide whether or not we were going to get a dog, you know, like, okay, well, is this going to limit the number of children that we're going to have? Is this going to that it does occupy a part of our attention, but in terms of actually making decisions about our family and the number of our family, like it's not an either or situation.
Yeah.
But for some people it is. For some people it's.
I think it does. I can see. I have 2 dogs, and I can see how it can take the place of a child. For some people, and we joke a lot because in our families we have a lot of pets. Like everybody has kids and stuff, but they have a pet. So when we get together, there's sometimes like a whole horde of children running around, and then a whole pack of dogs running around or something. You know, like it really does happen. But normally, like for us, anyways, we got dogs after we had our children, and then from that point on, you're still open to life. You're still living by the Catholic faith and everything. But those dogs really did take on, like, oh my goodness, you're up in the middle of the night to let them out to go to the bathroom. Oh, they're whining through the night. Oh, you got to punish them. Oh, you got to discipline. You got to do this, that, and the other thing. But when we be talking about it, my brother-in-law and sister who they have lots of kids, but they don't have any pets right now. And they want to get one, but they're not there yet. And they're like, okay, you cannot say that raising a pet is like raising children, because you can't lock a child in a cage in your basement when you don't want to be around them anymore. And like, well, you can, it's just not looked on, like highly on. But you know what I mean? Like it's true. It is like a dog and a cat they're not human. They are pets. They are something that you can put in a cage and be like, no, I don't want to see you right now. You can go in and spend some time. And sometimes as parents, we do like, okay, it's nap time. You're going down for an hour, you know what I mean? But they need it. But animals, you don't have to. I can leave my animal at home all day if I need to and not have to worry about it. I cannot do that with 2 of my children.
Right.
The other ones are old.
Yeah, and there's something to be said too, right? I think Pope Francis, in the context of what he was saying, you know, that this is part of the human sort of journey of life, right? Yeah. That you know, being a parent is something that changes us, right? Being a parent is something that continues the life of the church, that continues the life of our love between spouses, right? And when we choose animals over children, we're denying ourselves that.
I think there's a really awesome journey if you think about it. You go from being a child with parents, and hopefully, if you had a good childhood and everything else, you have parents or guardian figures, parental figures that love you, and so you get this unconditional love. It doesn't matter what you do. If you do this, that, or the other thing, they still love you, and they're still so you're being unconditionally loved with no love needing to be done in return to your parents necessarily. I mean, you do, but it's learned. And then eventually we grow into a relationship. We grow not out of that relationship. We grow from that relationship into a relationship where now you get into a couple relationship of some sorts, or some people do, where there's a give and take, where I'm going to give my full self and my spouse is going to give their full self back. You know what I mean? And then so now there's a give. I'm still getting something out of this relationship, but I have to give something in this relationship.
Yeah.
And then we move on to being parents. And that relationship then becomes where you're giving fully of yourself as a parent, but you're not necessarily, like, there's a little baby in front of you that cries, eats, and whines, like cries, eats, and poops. That's all they do. And so you're giving fully of yourself to this little bundle of skin, and you love this thing, and you're giving fully, and you're not getting anything back in return. And I feel like that kind of shows our relationship with God in a weird way, meaning like we do. A lot of times when we enter into a relationship with God, we get that we start to feel like the goods, the feelies. It's like, oh, it's so awesome. I'm so in love with God, and we get all that feeling in return. Like you feel so peaceful and loved and everything else. And it's a two-way street. And then it gets into this time where you start praying, and you start doing, and you're going through your faith life, but not necessarily getting those feely-goody things that you got when you first began, or those realizations. It's kind of, I don't know. Anyways, does that make sense?
I think that's how I would say it, is that the goods that are the fruit of parenthood are much higher level fruits than a dog ownership, or like and saying that from there, like because a human child is like infinitely complex.
Yeah,
that it's like, it's not this relationship of exchange that I'm going to do this for you, but there is something that I get from that, and it's not something that is just kind of this economy of relationship. It's like, okay, no, I'm actually a better, more responsible person as a father than I would be otherwise.
Yes,
I'm making more responsible decisions about how to use my time, how to use my resources. Thinking in a much more long-term way about the kind of person I want to be 2 weeks from now, a month from now, 20 years from now, because it's not like my own well-being or my own kind of satisfaction aren't the only stakes involved there. So, there are goods that are returned, but they're much higher level goods than this kind of give and take, or, a dog who's just wagging his tail at you.
Well, I mean, like, one of the classic jokes was, you want to see who loves you more, you take your girlfriend and you take your dog, you put them both in the trunk, and then you see who's happy to see you when you open up the trunk. Oh my God. It's the complexity. What I mean by that is the complexity. That's the joke. But there's a complexity there between the difference of pet ownership. Your dog's always, like, you lock it in the trunk, it's always happy to see you, versus a human, not your girlfriend, not your kids. I'm not saying that, but
let's check his trunk on the way out. On the way. But okay, so I want to talk about this because obviously what the Pope is saying is clear to me, anyways. I hope it's clear to people listening. I know it's clear to you guys too. So the media takes a little bit of what he says, which is not unusual for Pope Francis, right? Like media's treatment of Pope Francis, to take something he said, make a headline out of it, shove it all over the news. And it took a couple days, actually, for this to get into the news, right? It wasn't a story right away, and then all of a sudden it exploded, what the Pope said. So that's one part. The second part is people's response to it. When CNN tweeted the headline of this story, on Twitter, they got something like 50,000 comments on the post, right? Of mostly negative. Towards the Pope, like, stay out of our business, and who are you to say, like all these different things, which to me I found unusual for a couple of reasons. One, the Pope said something similar to this in 2014. He used this almost exact example that people pay too much attention to their pets over their children, something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing. Obviously, I don't have the text in front of me from 2014, so it's not the first time he's used this example. The second thing is like, obviously the Pope is looking at the situation in the world, and he's asking us to, to do what we're intended to do, to be fruitful, to make sure that our kids are being paid attention to, that those who don't have parents are still loved, that fatherhood and motherhood is a gift. Like, those are all the things he was talking about. But so much negativity. So why are people responding in this way? Like, number one, there's one thing about the media sort of framing it how they want. And obviously they got what they wanted. They got so much response to it. Then the other way, like, why are people so upset at a comment like this?
Do you think he might have hit a couple heartstrings?
Exactly. And
and the context is that there are some contending narratives that people are participating in here. So you have the position of the church that, family, procreation, all of these are kind of intrinsic goods and proper goods of marriage, or the proper fruit of marriage, where that's possible. Where it's not possible, it's understandable and usually hard for the people that it's not. But, you have, and all that is kind of rooted back through, JP2's theology of the body, which is reaching back to Humanae Vitae, which, the context for that is that this idea that the world is becoming overpopulated. We need to need to shrink the. So there are these kind of interesting example, or like positions that people take to justify this alternate perspective. But it's interesting now that you have economists and other people saying that there's actually a real concern in projecting future economic projections, to say that if we're not replacing the population, we're actually like a negative birth rate, which we're experiencing, is actually one of the largest threats to the future of the global economy, because you're going to get an inverse pyramid of population. You have a small number of people taking responsibility for supporting a larger and aging population. So it's interesting now that the 1960s, 1970s narrative of overpopulation is going to be what's ending the world. Now there's a very different tune, just on a practical level, let alone the theological goods.
But even if you look at everything, there's a theme that goes along with, from the time you're teenagers, and that's not what the church teaches, but at times in schools and other TV shows and everything else, which is, no, you should be able to get the pleasure of, let's say, sex, and not the punishment of children, right? If that makes sense, like that's your, like, you should be able to have sex. So that's why you're allowed to have contraceptions, you're allowed to have abortions, you're allowed to have, because it's about you and not about the being of children. And so the world has tried to put, from the last 30 years, 40 years, legalizing abortion and everything else, has put the person, I don't want to say mother, because that's too, but like the parent figure, as take care of yourself and who cares about your kids. And that, so people that have grown up with that and maybe even believed it or whatever, this is hitting them to the core, because that's not how we're made. We're made to be fruitful and multiply. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That is why we are. It's instinct. It's that's why we're drawn to the pleasurable things about sex and everything else. So that's like it is there. It's in our blood and our genes and everything else. And so we are living selfishly against doing it sometimes. Not everybody. The Pope was talking about specifically the joys of parenthood, St. Joseph, the adoptive parent. And so if somebody couldn't have kids, encouraging looking at adopting, that there's tons of kids out there that don't have parents that you could be parents for. And then sometimes, God, that's not in the cards for people either. And but they have spiritual children. You know what I mean? Yeah. Even if you look at, I would say, like, you look at godparents and you look at, like, our roles in the church's society, we call our priest our father, if you want, like, we have godparents, it's all about this structure of adoptive parents, if you will,
Yeah, exactly. And that is the point that Pope Francis was making. Like this, I'm just going to read another part from his general audience. He says, "How many children in the world are waiting for someone to take care of them? And how many married couples want to be fathers and mothers, but are unable to do so for biological reasons? Or, although they already have children, they want to share their family's affection with those who do not have it. We should not be afraid to choose the path of adoption, to take the risk of welcoming." And then he makes the point about pets and things, So that's all in the context of that our whole structure is made to, to care for one another. Now, you both have pets. My family has a pet, my mom and dad. And that's not to say that those are bad. Like people,
Absolutely not.
People are like, oh, having a pet is bad now. Like no, like people just jump to that conclusion. Of course, the Catholic Church says having a pet is bad now.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
what I mean? That's not it at all. So for a pet owner who's listening to the words of Pope Francis and is really upset, like how do we move them from really understanding what is
Ask yourself, do you have a kid? Because if not, then you're no. I'm kidding. No, I think you look at what the overall message here was.
Yeah.
And the message here was that you need to. I mean, what is your situation in life? Obviously, if you are not married and you're not, if you're a single person in their 20s or whatever else, not to go have a kid.
Right.
There's an order, there's a stage. But I think he was just bringing forward that there is a completeness in our souls, in ourselves, in fulfilling this, whether it be spiritually adoptive or physically becoming parents. There is a wholeness in our spirit and our souls by completing that part of the journey.
And I don't mind that these words of Pope Francis really, angered people or provoked people a little bit. I know we talked a couple episodes ago about in the Holy Family, we were talking about don't provoke your children. We were talking about that. I know we said that, but I don't mind that these comments provoked people because oftentimes I find when I'm reading the scriptures, for example, or listening to the Holy Father or meditating or praying, when something really irks me, it moves me to look deep inside myself.
Yeah.
Right? There's a reason why this has touched the conscience of a number of people, right? Because maybe it made them look at the reality. Now, some people are upset for the wrong reasons. Some people, I know at first people were asking me, is he condemning people who can't have children?
Yeah,
of course not. Like that's not what the Pope is saying at all. But when we're touching the conscience of people who are living in a situation where they're like, I'm not having children, and people have so many reasons today. The reasons they say, I'm not having children today because number one, it's too expensive. It's too expensive to raise a child in today's world, right? Then they go and spend thousands of dollars on animals. Yeah, they say, I don't want to raise a child in today's world. It's too scary out there, or we don't know what's going to happen in the future. Sure, we're all afraid of the future. We look at the future and we're all worried about it. But that's not new to today. That's not new to today.
No, can you imagine, Saint Joseph saying to Mary, like, well, while they're fleeing to Egypt,
Yeah.
Right.
then it's like, oh, I don't know if this is the right environment to be raising a child.
That's
like
right.
While they're
and-
killing every 2-year-old boys around them, Hebrew boys.
This is the
So
story.
there are a lot of reasons that people have, and that might seem, legitimate in their heart to not have children. And I want to say I'm not a parent, but a lot of my friends are parents, a lot of my family members are parents, and it is scary when someone is pregnant for the first time and you have that, you're excited, but it's scary.
Yeah, for sure.
So parenthood is scary. A lot of things that you do for the first time is scary. And I think the Pope's addressing people like that fatherhood is a gift. Motherhood is a gift. And we have to move past our fear. We have to move past those things that just sort of take over our mind and our heart that are not that true. If these things are pricking your conscience a little bit, then maybe it's for a reason.
Look into it. I find if I'm listening to something and it irks me, like you said, it kind of gives me a
Yeah.
I look at, okay, why is this? And sometimes I feel there's injustice being done, or sometimes I feel like, okay, I don't agree with that. Mm-hmm. Why don't I agree with that? And do I go back to, like, nothing that the Pope said is in any way against what the church teaches.
Of course not.
It is 100% in line with what the church teaches and always has taught. You know what I mean? I don't think but you notice that it's not the Catholic newspapers or the dioceses that are getting upset with this comment. It's the secular world that has been promoting the it's all about you. It's not about children. It's all about you.
You know what I found really funny? This might be an aside or off topic, but like the week after this story broke about Pope Francis saying this about children or pets or whatever, there was kind of like I don't know if it was like a biographical article that kind of circulated in the media about Pope Benedict XVI.
Yeah.
And I think they were just looking at his life. He's 90 some years old now and whatever. Anyways, and it like one of the main things that we're talking about that he owns a cat. that
Yeah.
that he has a cat named Chico.
trying to show that
and I thought, what timing of this? It's
of
like,
course.
I know that wasn't intentional, but I just thought it was really funny because, thrown into the mainstream like that, people were like, criticizing these comments from the Pope. And then it was like, oh, by the way, the Pope, the previous Pope, the Pope Emeritus Benedict, has a cat.
And that kind of detail or that kind of fact should throw nuance on what Pope Francis is saying. That like, okay, no, this pet ownership is not an intrinsic evil.
It's not what he's getting at.
And it's like, but he's saying like as a moral teacher, as the highest moral authority in the church, for him to say, sometimes our priorities aren't exactly what they should be.
Yes.
And when our priorities aren't, that should unsettle us, or that should cause us to question our own priorities. But again, for those of us who own cats and dogs and whatever, they're like, okay, no, I need to be deliberate about aligning my priorities so they're proper. So, owning a dog, like, how does that work into family life? How does that work into, raising boys to be responsible? Okay, they're feeding the dog. They're taking the dog for a while. Like, this is a way that works within
the family unit.
Yeah.
I think anytime the Pope speaks or something like that, moves us, that's a good thing. I think it moves us to look at our priorities and say, do we have them checked? So maybe even if you have children and a pet, or you have no pets or whatever it is, it's always good for the Christian faithful always to look at our priorities in life. What are we doing that's not very good for us today, or that we're missing the point on,
or what God's calling to you? Like maybe it's stirring in your heart now because this all came to light. Maybe what is God stirring in your heart now for you to even a spiritual or adoptive parent role? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
there was this story that Pope Francis shared. I think it was originally when he spoke about this in 2014. It moved me a little bit because he was telling the story of a doctor and his wife who couldn't have children, and they were going to adopt a child, and they were in this process for a long time. And when they finally got the call that there was, this child available for adoption, they had gone to see this child. And when they laid eyes on him, they fell instantly in love, and then the people at the adoption agency or maybe the staff there, I forgot how it was, told this doctor and his wife that the child has some medical issues.
Yeah.
Right. And someone said to the doctor, how did you take that news? And he said, if they would have told me on the phone that this child had medical issues, he said, I may not have come today. He said, but I laid eyes on this child and he stole my heart. And honestly, it was a great story for Pope Francis to share. But that's the whole point, I think, of what his thing. We have to move beyond what's in our head, what's in our heart, and move to start looking at people, to start looking at our life and seeing what's really important, to see what really matters, what God is calling us to do and live and love in our life, and we can only do that when we're with people. When again, that's not to say that animals are bad, but we do that when we're with people. We're made to be in relationship. We're made to be in a community of people, and when we lay eyes on children or lay eyes on people, it moves our heart. It moves us to live, forms of fatherhood and motherhood and brotherhood and sisterhood, a community of people who are doing what God has called us to do. So that's all I think that he was really saying, and I think that's really important because, whatever our priorities, whatever our life situation is now, maybe we can all reflect on that. Maybe we can all reflect on, am I really doing what the Lord is placing in front of me? Am I spending time doing what God is calling me to do, to be in a community of people and not locked behind a screen or locked behind falsities or giving all my love and attention to an animal and when I could be having these human interactions. I don't know. That's, I think, what his message calls us to.
I think so. I think that's the big picture.
Yeah, that's the big picture, and we're always looking at the big picture. So thanks for this conversation. We're kind of out of time on this a little bit, but I think it was good.
Hopefully it clears things up a little bit from people that just read the
headlines.
Headlines,
because the headline, if I can say, I know we probably said this at the beginning of the episode, it was not fair to what Pope Francis said. Again, he's used to that, I guess.
Yeah.
We're used to that.
Yeah,
We're used to that. When I see a headline
all
like that,
dogs go to heaven. You know, that whole thing.
So that's actually maybe a good thing to mention before we go off the air is when you see a headline like that the Pope said something, go to the Vatican website and read the actual text of what Pope Francis says. The Vatican is always releasing a transcript of what he said, what he actually said. So go read what he actually said, put it in context. Don't just read headlines. All right. So that's it for today. So if anyone has any comments, hate messages, things that they want to share, maybe share a story about, I know there's people out there who are mourn that they can't have children, maybe who have lovely children, whatever it might be. You want to share that story with us, you can send us an email at thecatholicbuzzpodcast@gmail.com, or you can comment on our Facebook and Instagram pages as well. You can find us pretty much anywhere now. Right? That's very exciting.
Pretty much all over the place. It's great.
Yes. And right immediately after this episode, Matt, we got to go check Josh's trunk.
Yeah.
For Josh Sullivan and Matt Van Milligan, my name is Father Daniele. We'll see you next time on The Catholic Buzz.